Welcome to the Revival Method podcast, where we teach you actionable steps that you can take to start moving, thinking, and feeling better. And welcome back to another episode of the Revival Method podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Brandon Parker, and today I'm just going to be shooting from the hip. There's not a large planned out structure of what I want to talk about today. I just keep getting this question, and I want to give you the roadmap that you can follow to improve the problem that you're having. So the number one question that I get is, Doc, I'm having trouble getting off the floor. My knees are killing me. Or I'm trying to go up the stairs and down the stairs, and my knees are bothering me tremendously. And this keeps manifesting in a bunch of different ways. My knees hurt when I lunge. My knees hurt when I walk, run, jump. What can we do to improve our circumstances so our knees are no longer the bottleneck to our success? Before I jump into this and give you step by step of what you should be doing or what you could be doing to improve this circumstance, I have one small ask. If you've been listening to this podcast and you haven't taken the 5 to 10 seconds that it would take to give us a 5-star review, that would mean the absolute world to me. My goal is to help as many people as possible, and it starts with building awareness around this podcast because that allows me to go deep. It allows me to give you step-by-step instructions that I use to help our one-on-one clients successfully overcome their issues. But I can't do that unless I build the awareness, right? So it would mean the world if you can share this podcast, give a 5-star review, and perhaps if you want to tag me on an Instagram story, that's also great as well. Okay, so what do we do if we are having issues with, let's say, our knees, right? Our knees are giving us some type of discomfort or mobility restrictions during a certain activity. Well, the first thing that we must do is find the movements that we can do and build from there. So let me give you an example. Let's say somebody is feeling a tremendous amount of discomfort in going up and down the stairs. Let's look at that movement from a bird's eye view. That is really no different than a step up, which is a close cousin to a lunge. We are simply putting all of our weight onto one limb, passing all that tension through the knee joint and the patellar tendon, which is the tendon that connects all the muscles in the front of your leg to your shin bone, right? So how do we make that movement easier for you to do? Well, the first thing that I would try is adding more stability to the movement. Let's try holding on to something while we get into the lunge / walking upstairs position. When we add stability to a movement, we're able to express more force. Think about it like this. You will always find somebody able to leg press more than barbell back squat or squat in general. The reason why is because the leg press has a guided rail that takes out all the requirement to stabilize that weight, because you can push left, you can push right. It's still going to go in one direction. Versus when you are free squatting, you have to stabilize everything, maintain balance and coordination throughout the entirety of the movement. Therefore, you're not going to be able to express as much force. So by simply adding stability into the movement you're having trouble with, that might be the secret that you've been missing all along. So let's say you add stability into the movement, but yet you're still feeling that discomfort in the area that you are trying to improve upon. Let's simply try to regress that movement by simply either taking weight away from the movement or reducing the amount of reps, sets, or range of motion. Okay, these are all regressions. So let's say your pain doesn't really kick in until a certain angle of the knee joint. Okay, that it would basically manifest itself when you're on the very bottom portion of the squat. If you feel like that is where you're having discomfort, let's see if we were to reduce the range of motion by simply adding a box or a chair or something that you can bring your butt to Let's see if we can hang out there for a couple weeks to start to strengthen the range of motion and make sure that we overcome the problem that we're currently facing. And then once we feel like we've added a little bit of weight, we build some confidence in that movement, we retest, trying to go a little bit lower. All this to say, a little bit of discomfort is okay. Now, when I say a little bit, the research shows anywhere between a 4 to 6 out of 10 is good for rehabilitation. Of course, you have to use your own discretion, and I do advise you to talk to a professional, especially if you have a high pain tolerance. But all this to say, a little bit of discomfort shouldn't be fearful. We are forcing the body to adapt, so there is going to be points of challenge and points of slight discomfort. Okay. So let's say you are adding stability, still didn't give you the results you're looking for. Let's say you reduce the range of motion, still not getting the results you're looking for. Now it's time to regress this movement into a more simplistic movement. So you have a lunge where you're putting all your weight into one leg. That means you have to stabilize and move through entire range of motion on one singular limb. What do? Let's add the other limb back into the movement. Now we have more stability, we have more strength because we have a whole nother limb helping us with the movement. And by doing so, we're more than likely going to have more mobility in this particular exercise as well. If you are able to do this movement, I would tell you to try to train it through a full range of motion, slowly adding reps, sets, and weight over time until you feel confident, and then try to go back to the single leg movements that we tried earlier. So you see, it's just a sliding continuum of where you are. Are we doing single leg squats, or are we doing just isometric holds with a quarter squat, right? And we're just basically building a roadmap along the way, finding ways that we can fit each exercise within our capabilities. So let's continue down this roadmap because I know some people are still struggling with the squat, right? You add the other leg back in, right? And you are also adding a box in there to reduce the bottom half of your strength or your squat. What do you do now? Well, if you're still feeling an excessive amount of discomfort, the next thing that I would suggest for you to do is just get into a shoulder width stance, crack those knees just a little bit, and let the hips drop as low as you can comfortably until you feel like, okay, this is the deepest I can go without it getting too uncomfortable. This at its fine, like this is giving you tension to the knee that you have the ability to adapt and strengthen to over time. Now, some people might think, how is that even exercise? Well, clearly, listening to our symptoms, this is a proper dosage for your current ailment, right? So even if that feels like it's too simple and silly, you are doing something. And over time, when it becomes easier and easier and easier, then you can try something a little bit more complex. Okay. So I would love to go in deeper if people are interested in that, where how we can modify movements, progress those movements to fit your capabilities. You just have to let me know in either the Spotify questions or the YouTube comments. I don't know if Apple has that, but you can always let me know through our community, and I would love to do a deep dive. I just want to keep things pointed and concise and actionable. So I gave you some options that you can try. You can always do a set count of anywhere between 1 to 3 rounds, depending on how you feel. And then for repetitions, remember that repetitions is simply a means to getting to a challenging point. So if, 10 reps are too easy and you don't want to add more weight, do 15 reps. Just get to the point of challenge where it's not too unbearable and you don't get symptoms the next day. All right, so now you have a great idea of what exercise you should be doing to overcome this knee issue, right? What's the next step? What else can I do other than expose the body to stress and it strengthens over time? Okay, well, what's the other side of the equation? For every high of stress, there must be a low. How do we recover to make sure that we're ready for the next peak again? Well, we're going to have to make sure that we're eating enough protein and enough calories in general. protein is the building block of our body. So if we are not eating adequate amounts of protein, all this stress is just going to create stress, and we're not going to have the materials we need to recover the stress that we just created, right? So you need to make sure that we're eating enough protein. Okay. And if you are new to the podcast, a simple way that you could find that out is zero 0.8 grams per body pound. 200-pound male times 0.8 is going to be 160. That shows you my math skills. 160 grams. Now, either you're male or female, that remains the same. If you're somebody that has a kidney issue, I would like for you to talk to your healthcare provider just to make sure that it is safe for you to consume that. Now that we're eating enough protein, how about calories? Why do we care about calories? Well, when we are not eating enough calories, we are in a state called catabolism. Our body's breaking things down, and we don't have enough energy to build things up. My suggestion is to try not to be in a fat loss phase, especially when you are trying to recover from an injury. I'd rather you be in what we call maintenance. You're not gaining or losing weight. It just ensures that when you're eating protein, you're eating these micro and macronutrients. They're not scarce. So your body has plenty of resources to rebuild and recover from. When people are trying to be on a harsh diet and they're not really feeding their bodies, they tend to see more and more aches and pains. So finding the right caloric amount is going to be dependent on your body weight and the amount of muscle that you have. But the easiest way that you could find this is just look at your current diet right now. And once you have an understanding of what you eat on a typical basis, are you gaining, losing, or maintaining weight? That is kind of an easy way for you to ballpark what you are eating, or at least the amounts you're eating. And then if you're losing weight, add a little bit more calories in if that's not your goal. If you're gaining weight, you can reduce it to a point where you're maintaining your weight, right? Let's keep it simple. And then lastly, the last thing that you should be focusing on is the overarching recovery. Okay. So once again, for every high, there must be a low. We talked about protein, we talked about calories. But when it comes to your stress in sleep, we need to try to optimize that the best we can. Our recovery happens in our sleep phases. So if you're not prioritizing your sleep, you're going to be in a situation where your recovery is going to be much longer than it would have been if you are maximizing your sleep potential. So, without getting into the fancy supplements, what are some things that you can do starting tonight to really start improving your sleep? One, if you feel like you wake up in the middle of the night with anxious and racing thoughts, let's mind dump. Get a piece of paper, write down everything that you have on your mind. It doesn't need to make sense. Just get it on a piece of paper. That is a psychological trick to empty your mind and basically allow you to sleep through the night. Number two, if you have the time, I suggest that you do a small stretching routine, specifically focusing on areas that feel the most tight to you. When you let the body fully relax, the mind tends to follow as well. And your sleep latency, the amount of time it takes for you to go to sleep, shortens more and more and more to the point where when your head hits the pillow, you're dead asleep. Now that's called being optimal, right? And then lastly, what you could do with your sleep is very simple. Waking up and going to bed at the same time. Your body craves routine. It runs on a circadian rhythm, which means that there is an intricate release of hormones that allows you to wake and fall asleep. And the more that we can follow this rhythm and tune in this rhythm, the better your body can get in and out of these cycles more efficiently, which means when you wake up, you're not going to be in your deepest stage of sleep, meaning you're not going to be waking up super, super groggy. So these are all very simple things. And of course, we can get deeper, but if you're not addressing the big rocks here, there's no chance that you are going to make any meaningful results. So let's keep it basic. Let's keep it simple. Okay. So just to recap here, and I know I've talked a lot, but you get me going, you get me excited, and I wanted to keep this super practical. So just to recap, if you're experiencing knee issues, It might be a patellar tendon issue. It might be a meniscus injury. These things definitely have the opportunity to respond properly and well to resistance training. We just have to find the exercise that you find tolerable and places the structure underneath stress. So you can do that by either adding or removing sets, reps, range of motion, or progressing or regressing the movement pattern itself. Single leg is going to be harder than double leg, right? Adding more stability makes it easier, while removing it makes it harder. And then just make sure that the body is getting the necessary materials and environment it needs to be a recovery machine, right? So give the body the materials, whether it be protein and calories, and then make sure it's in the proper environment. Your stress is low and your sleep is high. All right. I hope this wasn't just a bunch of just mumbo jumbo talking way too fast. You might have to listen to this a couple times, but as promised, action packed, super concise, gave you practical steps. I'll see y'all next week.